بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم اخرجنا من ظلمات الوهم اللهم اخرجنا من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمنا بنور الفهم اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا من خزائن علومك يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. My brothers, my sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Tomorrow is the wafat of our dear lady Khadija alayhi salam, and we will be discussing her life. So today will be the final topic in the series that we've been discussing for the last 8 days on seeking nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, a quick recap. We said we want to look at the world through an Islamic lens, a sacred lens, by which we're able to better answer all of our questions. We want to look at the world through the lens of Tawheed, that all the qualities that we see and interact with come from one single source, and they all came from one single will, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You and I and everything else was intended from the very beginning with the same will that created the mountains and the skies and all the world and the angels and the Prophet himself and the Ahlul Bayt. You and I and our parents and everyone else was created. You are always meant to be here at this time. You're always meant to be you. And you have a decision to make whilst you're here. That the aim of life is to acquire as many of the names of God at the highest levels of intensity as we can. That we wish to emulate those names to be Rahman, Rahim, Qawi, Jabbar, all those different names. To be strong, to be merciful, to be beautiful, to be all of these things and manifest those in our lives, because everything is a manifestation of God's names. We discussed Jihadul Nafs, Jihadul Akbar, we discussed diseases of the heart, and we discussed forming a mission statement as individuals, as families, and as communities based on the two main values of knowledge and of love. We spoke a lot about knowledge and of love and bring it into action. Now, I'm going to get through as much as I can today because, of course, there's a lot more to say and I won't be able to say it all in half an hour. But what I will say is going to be a little bit challenging in the beginning. You know, sometimes we speak about a few concepts here that were maybe a little bit philosophical, a little bit challenging. But if we can catch them, then the rest of the talk becomes really easy and it's really beneficial for us too. So hopefully you guys can be with me as we just try to catch these two concepts. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to insan, إِنَّكَ كَادِحٌ إِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ كَدْحًا فَمُلَاقِيهِ. He says, O insan, you are moving towards your Lord and you will definitely, inevitably meet Him. You're going to meet Allah. Before you are an adult, before you mature, you're a child, you're not responsible for your actions. But when taklif comes, once a girl is 9 years old and once a boy is between 10 to 15, depending on his maturity level, then Allah tells the parents to step aside, and now I speak to the child directly, because child is now insan. And I say to the child, oh child, do you know that you're coming to meet Allah? Do you know that you will meet Allah like everyone will meet Allah? That means you're responsible for every single action you commit. Now, what does that mean to be responsible for every single action that we commit? A brother yesterday asked a question. I think it's a really important question. And I wanted to give more of a detailed answer here because it fits in very well with the talk. He asked about God's love, and how that fits in with the punishments in the afterlife. And so by the end of the lecture, it will become very clear as to how that would fit in. Because when Allah is saying to insan that you are responsible for all of your actions and you're coming to meet me, then we look at insan and we define insan. And we see that the scholars of Islam, especially those of philosophy, which are the whose two main scholars are the ones I'll be speaking about today, known as Ibn Sina and Mullah Sadra. Maybe you have not heard of them, but if you will read into them, they'll open up a whole new world of understanding Islam for you. All of the philosophers in Islam agree that the human being has a jawhar. Every human being has an essence. A jawhar means essence. That you have essential qualities that make you a human being. And without them, you wouldn't be human. Every single one of us has an essence. So let's just first try to define that concept of essence. Those are the two things that I'm going to speak to you about that are difficult. An essence and an accident. Okay? In philosophy, if you want to define a thing, then you define it as either an essence, it's in its essence what it is, and it always has accidents. What do I mean by that? An essence of a thing is a quality that if it's present, then the thing is present with it. It's such an essential quality, it makes up what a thing actually is. Whereas an accident can either be there, it's a quality that can be there or not be there. A thing remains itself whether it has an accidental quality or not. So let me give an example of that. So we have chairs over here, right? A chair, it has legs, you sit on it, it has a seat. Now, the seat of a chair is an essence. If there's no seat, there is no chair. You see? The chair's seat is part of its essence, its essential quality. When there's a seat, you can say there's a chair. There are different chairs, different sorts of chairs. If you want to say legs are there too, maybe a seat on the ground is no longer a chair, it becomes something else. But you want to say a seat as part of a chair is an essence, part of the essence of the chair. Whereas, if the chair is made out of wood, or made out of metal, or made out of plastic, these are all qualities that can be there or not be there. If it's made of wood, it's still a chair. If it's plastic, it's still a chair. If it's metal, it's still a chair. Or not, it's still a chair. So it's an accidental quality. We also have accidents as human beings, and we also have essences. Everything does. That's how you define what a thing is. So if you want to define something in the realm of logic, when you want to define what an actual thing is, you break it down to its most inner part core, which is its essence. And then you define it through the essence. And then you can add accidents onto that. So, if that's clear, we can move on from that. Okay?
Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat.
I know it's a foreign concept to many of us, but it's good if we challenge ourselves sometimes. It's good. So we have essences, jawhar, and we have accidents. It's called in Arabic ard. طيب, jawhar ard. We have the accident, we have the essence. Why is this relevant to us right now? Because it's going to help us really answer the question as to what happens to us in the world to come. Ibn Sina, a scholar from 800 years ago, he's known to the Europeans as Avicenna, a very famous scholar. Ibn Sina says, every human being has a jawhar, every human being has an essence. And the essence that you're born with is that which defines you, is that which remains forever. You're born with an essence as Hussain, as Tawqir, as Adam, as Ali, as whoever it is. That's what you're born with, that's you. That's the definition of who you are. And then, throughout your life, the actions you do are accidents, because they could have been there or they could not be there, but they don't define you You can perform good deeds, and then those are accidents. Those give you qualities, like you become someone who is Rahman, Rahim, as an accidental quality. You become a very forgiving person. Your forgiveness becomes an accident. It's not who you are, but it's a quality that you achieved that becomes a part of you, but not part of your essence. So, he says, what the human being can do is, they can decorate their essence with all these amazing, beautiful qualities. Generosity, courage, beauty, love. Those all become qualities of accidents. You see? So they could not be there, and they could be there. You're still there, whether they're there or not. But they come on, and they added on to you. What does that mean? Let me give you an example. Let's say we had a really old building, okay? Really old bricks. And I went inside and I got this amazing paint, top of the range paint. And I painted the entire building, all the walls, and it looks awesome, it looks amazing. But the bricks are still very shaky. The foundations of the building are still very shaky, but it looks awesome. Very similar. According to Ibn Sina, this is all you'll ever be able to achieve, that you can decorate yourself. This was the understanding for hundreds of years, and no one had anything to say about it or a counter argument to offer, until about 400 years later, Mullah Sadra, another great philosopher, the head of the transcendent philosophy, he came in and he says, this is hard for me to accept. It's hard for me to accept the fact that this is all I will ever be. What I'm born as is what I am forever. That's my essence, and all I can do is decorate it. That means Abu Sufyan is born with his essence, and it's always going to be the essence of Abu Sufyan. He can only decorate it. That's all you can hope for. So he contemplates and contemplates. And remember, I told you he had that methodology of Burhan, Arfan, Quran. He would use his rationale, his intellect, and textual knowledge, but he would also use visionary experience of illumination, of disciplining oneself to the point that God begins to give you the light of knowledge. And you would see that. He would go to visit the shrine of Lady Ma'suma alayhi salam often. And over there he would hope to be given an answer. And he would think, Ya Allah, is it true? Can a human being never change who they really are? Because your essence is always your essence. It's your jawhar. Is it true that the most I can ever hope for is to decorate myself? To decorate these qualities upon who I am? And this is very similar to what we've been speaking about when it comes to knowledge coming to you directly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as nur. Because Mullah Sadra, he was able to bring forth about 400 new philosophical ideas that the Muslims could debate from then till now. And this wasn't something that was based on rationale. This was something that he claims was a God-given gift. So we want to experience that too. So he says in one of his contemplation periods in the shrine of Lady Ma'suma, as he's sitting there contemplating, he has an idea. And he finds the answer to the question he's been asking. And he says, I'll say the sentence because it's a bit complicated, the sentence. إِنَّ وَجُودَ الْعَرَض هُوَ مِنْ شُؤُونَ وُجُودَ الْجَوْهَرِ, which means the station of the accident is one of the stations of the essence. But what he's trying to say is that the accident is not outside of the essence. When it comes to the human being, the accident is one of the stages that can seep into the essence. It forms the essence. He says that you're in a state of potential. Your essence has not been completed. It's not actualized. You weren't born with an actualized essence. As in, the essence, remember, is the definition of who you truly are. He says this was not determined when you were born. And it's not simply that you decorate that essence which was determined. It's that you determine what your essence is through your actions, which are accidents now, but they seep into your soul and become your essence. Meaning, you become what you do. The definition of who you are, the definition of your essence, is based on all the actions that you commit, but not as an accident. You're not decorating who you are. You're not acquiring qualities that are painted onto you on the outside. You're acquiring new bricks. New bricks. Now they can be worse than the old bricks, but they can be a lot better too. That means you are the one who forms the definition, the true essence of you. You are what you do. If you want to find out who you are, then you are what you do. And that can be very scary. Because that means every single movement that you make, every single action, every single glance of an eye, every single word muttered through your tongue, every single intention that you have, all contributes to your essence. Imam Ali alayhi salam, he says, Kullu wi'a'in, every single container becomes full with whatever you pour into it. Illa al-ilm, innahu yattasi', except the container of knowledge, it only expands. The container of knowledge is the human being. This is very relative to the idea of essence and accident. Because your essence only expands. Whatever you put into it, it expands. Now, when you die, that's when the essence is finally actualized. Then it's done. According to Mullah Sadra, that's when the potential is over and you finally see who you are. Your ultimate definition. All death is a movement into the next realm, basically ending the stage of potential, moving into the stage of actuality. So, when we think of punishment in the afterlife, and when we think of reward in the afterlife, all that is an experience of you. You will experience yourself in its utmost capacity. So if you were able to form an essence which is deserving of godly reward, that's what you will experience based on you, based on your action. You created you. And you create, you determine your akhirah in that way. The very basic way of seeing this is, if you're good, when you die, you go to a really nice place. When you're bad, when you die, you go to a really bad place. Okay? That's the really basic way that we understand things. And that's okay if you want to understand them in that really basic way, because ultimately it means the same thing. But if you want to get into the detail of it, you're creating yourself. And I remember when we were taught this lesson, my teacher said, "Are you scared?" And we said, "Yeah." He said, "You should be. I've been scared for a really long time." Because then you sit down like this and you know every single movement you make is going to contribute to your essence. Every single food you eat, and how you sleep, and where you sleep, and how long you sleep, and the things you say, and the things you think, and things that you want to do, all these things contribute to who you are and your essence. This is beyond haram and halal now. Because Allah does not punish you for a thought. But you know when thoughts become actions, become intentions, they become a part of you. That also seeps into your soul. You experience yourself in that way. That's you. Allah might have mercy on you so that He doesn't punish you. But when you're left to your own self, how many people go insane when they're left to their own selves? If you're left to your own self, So you want to have a garden of thought that you can build on in the afterlife. Every movement. And that's why we have what is called tajassud al-a'mal. Okay, a lot of people when they die, you see them in ihtidar, just before they die, when they're getting ready on their deathbed, they start to hallucinate, or they start to say things like, no, no, or they speak to something, or they're scared. You know that they're witnessing themselves a lot of the time. Or they're witnessing creatures that they created. Because there are creatures that you create from your actions that you interact with in the next world. They might be creatures of light, and they may be creatures of darkness. It may be a beast who is the manifestation of your backbiting. There might be a creature of light who is a manifestation of your Salatul Layl that stays with you and guides you and protects you. So we have all of these different concepts, and we want to make sure that we build ourselves into being people of Allah. And we know that when we look at all the Gnostics and the mystics and all the concepts that they speak about, sometimes it might be a little bit intimidating. Because Mullah Sadra carries on. And the things that he speaks about, sometimes one might think, how can I ever reach that? And the words of the Imams also might intimidate you. When Imam Hassan al-Askari alayhi salam says, he says, إِنَّ الْوُصُولِ إِلَى اللَّهِ سَفَرٌ. To reach Allah, one must travel. There must be a journey. You must move from one place to the next place. You can't stay where you are. There has to be a movement. And the Prophet himself says, مَا خُلِقْتُمْ لِلْفَنَاءِ بَلْ خُلِقْتُمْ لِلْبَقَاءِ وَإِنَّمَا تَنْتَقِلُونَ مِنْ دَارٍ إِلَى دَارٍ. He says, you were not created for annihilation. You were not created so that you can perish. When you die, you don't perish. You live forever. You were created for baqa, for permanence. You're supposed to live permanently, forever. You don't die. Your body dies only. You don't die. He says the only thing that happens, تَنْتَقِلُونَ مِنْ دَارٍ إِلَى دَارٍ. You're moving from one house to another house. One home to another home. A world to another world. That's why Alamat al-Batba'i, he says that إِنَّكَ مَخْلُوقٌ أَبَدَيْ فَعْمَلْ لِلْأَبَدِيِّةِ. You're an infinite creation. So act in terms of infinity. Don't act in terms of the 70, 80 years here. And you have a long way to go. So part of this traveling, I'm going to try to get through them really quick because I have 10 minutes. I'm going to try to talk a bit faster. Part of this traveling is when Mullah Sadra brings forth the concept of al-asfar. Okay? And I understand that this is going to be way beyond what a lot of us have in mind in terms of our journey, but bear with me. He says there is something called the 4 journeys to God. The 4 journeys. These journeys explain a lot about what the mystics speak about in their books of mysticism. And the first journey is the journey that most people never ever leave. It's the journey that probably all of us here are on right now. It's the journey of moving from myself to God. I have to go to Allah. And that begins with moving from myself first. I have to move. That alone is difficult for most because we always wait for the other to move first. They should move first. But when you have a problem, when you recognize that a problem a lot of the time comes from ana, from that journey is what most of us are on right now, trying to overcome that ego. When insan is finally able to overcome that, and that might take 40, 50 years of self-discipline and disciplining the self, and most of the stories you hear are from that first journey. Mullah Sadra says that the mystic reaches the second journey. The second journey is when one finally witnesses God. They're there and they witness and they see only Allah, and they see nothing but Allah. The person becomes completely encompassed by God. That means the person doesn't even recognize their own self anymore. They reached, all they see is Allah. Your memories, gone. Your identity, gone. Who you are, who you love, your name, gone. Khalas, you saw God. Everything became blinded in front of God. Everything was gone, overshadowed. And all you do is sit and witness God's beauty. And you gaze. You just gaze at the beauty of Allah. Now, the one who reaches the second journey has to come back to the third journey. Otherwise, if you get stuck there, then you become what a lot of people might call insane. Okay? That's why they say a lot of the time those poets who would be called out for blasphemy, like Mansur al-Hallaj, famous Persian poet, he would say things like, Ana al-Haq, I am the truth. And they'd say he's claiming godhood. So they killed him. Poor guy was just stuck on the second journey. All he saw was God. He forgot about himself. But that's why the journey to Allah and this path, if one wants to tread that path of mysticism, they say you always need a teacher, and it needs a real hero. It needs a real strong person to take that path. It's not an easy path. That's why most people stick to the first journey. The second journey is very scary. Ultimately, the aim is to come back for the third journey. You come back to dunya. Physically, you're still here. Kind of like the Mi'raj. When the Prophet says, Salat Mi'raj al-Mu'min, the prayer is the Mi'raj of the believer. This is like a Mi'raj that anyone can experience, not only a Ma'soom. You come back, and this time, you're back in the world. You interact with everything, with different people, with buildings, with the sky, with home, with whatever it is. You see multiplicity around you, katharat, multiplicity. But for you, after you've completed those journeys, all you see is unity. You still only see Allah. The difference between the third journey and the first journey you interact with multiplicity and you see multiplicity. The third journey is you interact with multiplicity but you see only unity. There are people on earth who are of higher stations than prophets. And there are narrations from the Ahlul Bayt to say that. The Imam says, لِلَّهِ رِجَالٍ لَيْسُوا بِأَنْبِيَاءٍ يَغْبُطُهُمُ الْأَنْبِيَاءِ. Allah has men, they're not prophets, but certain prophets are envious of them and their stations. There might be people on earth that have completed these journeys. There might be people that come to your mind when you think of the famous mystics that may have done that. Then that person who has completed those journeys is supposed to become a guide and then take people towards God. Okay? For the fourth journey. Anyway, most of us will never go on these 4 journeys. We know that, right? Allah knows that too. He knows these are crazy journeys. You know, you're just trying to wake up to go to work in the morning. Thinking about going to the second and third journey, the fourth journey. So he says, I'll give you a way out, ya insan. There's a way that you can meet me. You can journey to me all the time. It doesn't have to be this crazy. He gave you a blueprint of the 4 journeys. You know when you have a blueprint, you're building a school, there's a blueprint, you know where everything's going to go? The blueprint of the 4 journeys is salat. Every day, you wake up for Fajr. Every day you pray Dhuhr. Every day now we're going to pray Maghrib and Isha. That's supposed to be a meeting. A real meeting with God. Liqa'ullah. Now we're talking on our level. Because Allah knows that those journeys are not for everyone. But there's a symbol of those journeys in Salat. When we come to pray, we're coming to meet God. When you go to meet someone that you truly admire and respect, how do you dress? How do you smell? How do you speak? How do you feel? But because we do it every day, we forget we're going to meet the creator of the entire universe. For those few minutes a day, it's supposed to be a real journey. Salat Mi'raj al-Mu'min. And we're supposed to be improving that prayer. If you're praying the same way at 50, that you did at 20. You've wasted 30 years of your life. Prayer is an art form that you're supposed to continue to improve upon all the time. Because we know we can't do those journeys. But salat is something we can do to improve our salat. That can be a journey for us. But then Allah says, I know that even that's hard for you. Even salat is hard for you. So I'll give you something else. I'll give you a sentence. I'll give you one dua. A sentence that represents salat, that represents all those journeys. This dua is the strongest dua. It's a dua we say all the time. We don't realize how strong it is and the power behind it. There's a huge essence to this dua. This dua, the Imams say, every other dua is not accepted until this dua is sent with it. Okay? This dua is the condition of every other dua. It's one golden sentence which represents all of salat and represents the 4 journeys. One dua that we can all say. That if we say this dua whenever we're feeling weak, truly, with a true intention, it takes 10 seconds to say it. We say it all the time, we don't realize what we're saying. If we say it with a true intention and focus, it can really give us extra willpower and help us on our journey towards God. When we're starting to stray, you say this dua with your true intention, you go forward. And that dua is simply Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
The Imam says, Kullu dua mahjoob an as-sama'. Every dua is covered from the sky. It's not received yet. Hatta tusalli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Only. It's like when you say a dua, it's like a fruit goes up to the skies, but it's only the peel of the fruit. The actual essence of the fruit is not in there yet. When you say salawat, it becomes there, it goes up. Everything is that way. Once a man asked the 6th Imam, I left my house, what's the best dua I could say after I leave my house? I said salawat. The Imam said, that's the best thing you can say. You have to say anything else. Salawat, we say it all the time like it's only a blessing. It's the strongest dua. And I challenge you, the next time you're feeling like you want to stray away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or there's an action that you're going to do that is part of destructive behavior, take one moment. Just stop for a second. Remember this moment and then say, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, and then commit the sin. Try it. Actually, don't try it. But try. Try. You won't sin. You won't do it. If you set salawat with the pure intention, you won't do it. This will give you extra willpower. You will see the effects of salawat. To constantly be reciting salawat. Salawat is a prayer for the Prophet and his family. You're praying for Ahlul Bayt. What better prayer is there? Imagine when they tell us, pray for your neighbor. Right? Al-jar, thumma ad-dar. But what if I pray for Ahlul Bayt before I pray for myself? Or every time I want to pray for anything, I pray for Ahlul Bayt. You're praying for Ahlul Bayt. That's what salawat is. We keep praying for them basically. Lord, send your blessings upon the Prophet and his family. That is the most powerful dua. Not any other dua. That's the most powerful dua. That dua is the essence of every other dua. And that dua is something that Allah gave us as a gift. It's one sentence. You can say it at any time. Just turn your intention towards it with focus. And this entire journey, everything we've been speaking about, from the mission statement, based on love, based on knowledge, based on acquiring the divine names, all begins with this dua and ends with this dua. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to aid us in always being of the people who are worthy to recite Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Thank you.